Good afternoon, everybody. Today, we are going to have our first lecture or first session on COVID-19, the pandemic of the millennium. Now, we'll be talking today on the structure and mode of infection. Before we go to the actual subject or the actual topic, let me first explain to you what do you mean by the title of the webinar, which says Pandemic of the Millennium. Now, when we are talking about pandemic, let us first understand what is epidemic. Epidemic refers to or is the disease that affects a large number of people or population within a community, within a population, or within a particular region. I repeat again, what is epidemic? Epidemic is nothing but a disease which affects a large number of people within a particular community, within a particular region, or within a population. That is what is epidemic. Moving on to what is pandemic. Pandemic is an epidemic. Okay, so pandemic is an epidemic which is or which travels to other places or other countries or other continents. I repeat, pandemic is nothing but an epidemic that spreads over multiple countries or continents. Now, to remember it, we can say that as the word pandemic starts with the letter or alphabet P, okay, it is basically nothing but an epidemic which has a passport. Now, when you go to other countries, you need a passport, right? Similarly, when pandemic or when an epidemic has to go to other countries, that is what is called as pandemic. So, pandemic goes to a larger or spreads to a larger scale as compared to epidemic. When it started off, when this COVID-19 started off, it was only restricted to China or Wuhan city of Hubei province. So that was an epidemic. When it moved down to different countries like Italy, Spain, those are the European countries, USA, India, Japan, and similar countries or continents, it took the shape of an pandemic. So our title, which says Pandemic of the Millennium, you've understood what pandemic means. Millennium, obviously, you know, millennium is nothing but from the year 1900 to 2000 is the entire, the span of the duration which moves on from 1900 to 2000 is the millennium. So therefore, we've rightly called this webinar as Pandemic of the Millennium. We will be giving you an insight of the entire COVID-19, starting with the structure and mode of infection, moving on to diagnostics, treatment, vaccine, and so forth. So, what is the structure of coronavirus? Deepi, can we have the next slide? Yeah. So, giving or talking about the brief history, as I said, what is an epidemic, what is pandemic? We've already seen the difference between epidemic and pandemic. We've also discussed what is the millennium. To start off with, in the year 2002-2003, there was an outbreak. Okay, now as we are talking about, let us discuss what is a coronavirus, because we'll be talking about COVID-19, which belongs to the family of coronavirus. Coronavirus is a large family of common viruses found in a large number of animals and humans. Coronavirus or your COVID-19 virus belongs to this coronavirus family, which is called as Coronaviridae. The family is known as Coronaviridae. Now, to this family, there are a large number of viruses, as I just mentioned, of which in the year 2002-2003, there was an outbreak of SARS, which is Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, abbreviated as SARS. After that is after 10 years down the line, or after a decade, 12 stands for Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. So 2002-2003 there was SARS, 2012 there was MERS, and 2019 there is COVID. Long or is caused by coronavirus. Coronavirus have their origin in animals. We call these viruses as zoonotic. Now, what do you understand by this? Reservoir in animals. From there, it has an intermediate host. Through the intermediate host, it gets infected to humans. In all these three cases, that was what was observed. In case of SARS of 2002-2003, from the bats, which are mammals, it was transmitted, or the intermediate host was a civet cat or a raccoon dog. And through these animals, it transmitted to humans. In MERS, it was again, the reservoir was bats. From bats, it was transmitted to camels, and through camel products such as milk or meat, it got transmitted to humans. COVID-19 or coronavirus, that is the recent outbreak of 2019. Here again, it was the reservoir, main reservoir was bat. Through bats, it got transmitted to snakes or pangolin, and through these animals, it got transmitted to humans. Now, these are basic delicacies which are seen in the wet markets of China, which are consumed, like civet cats, pangolin, snakes. All these animals are consumed by people of China, or they are found to be delicacies of the upper strata of the society in China, and it is assumed that through them it has been transmitted through the to the other people. As I said, human coronavirus was discovered way back in 1960. It was in the year 1968, actually, the findings was noted, or was what do you say, written down, or published in a very renowned journal of Nature by a Scottish virologist by the name of June Almeida and his group. And the name, which is coronavirus, comes from his basic structure, which was observed by TEM, which is transmission electron microscope. When a transmission electron microscope was carried out for this virus, it was seen that the envelope, which consists of spikes, which are glycoprotein made, show or appear or give the virus an appearance of a corona. Now, the corona is nothing but a crown or a halo which appears around the sun during the time of eclipse. So basically, the name has come from, or come through, the appearance of the virus, which was observed by an transmission electron microscope. That is how, and it has already been published in the 1968 Journal of Nature by a virologist by the name of June Almeida and his group or his co-workers. Next slide, please. Yeah, before we move on to the next slide, let me just give you an let me just brief you with respect to COVID-19. COVID stands for coronavirus infectious disease of 19. So we therefore call it as COVID-19. Why? Because the first case was registered in December 2019. That is why the 19 number has come. COVID is nothing but, as I said, coronavirus infectious disease. Now, this disease is caused by a virus which is SARS-CoV-2. Okay, this is the disease, this is the syndrome, and has been caused by SARS-CoV-2. Now, why is it being called as SARS-CoV-2 virus? Because this virus, that is your coronavirus, which causes COVID-19, has a resemblance, structural resemblance to the virus or to the outbreak which happened in the year 2002 by the SARS virus. Okay, I repeat, the COVID-19 is the infection or the disease, and the virus which causes it is called as SARS-CoV-2. SARS-CoV-2 is the virus. Why? Because the COVID virus has a structural resemblance to the SARS 2002 outbreak virus. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Fine. Giving a general introduction, as I've just mentioned, this will give you just an overview. your SARS, as I just mentioned, SARS-CoV-2 virus is a beta coronavirus. Now, as we said, the family is Coronaviridae. This family of Coronaviridae has 4 genera, which is alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. Your coronavirus 2, which is your SARS coronavirus 2, which causes the COVID-19, belongs to the beta coronavirus, which was discovered in the Wuhan city, Hubei province, China, in the year 2019 December. COVs are an enveloped positive sense single-stranded RNA viruses. They are not naked viruses. They have an envelope around it, and the genome is made up of a single-stranded positive or a plus or a sense strand of RNA. Now, what do you mean by positive or a sense strand? Positive or a sense strand basically can directly encode for an mRNA. If it is a negative strand, it has to be first converted into a positive strand, and then it can go on with the transcription and translation. Okay. However, if it is a positive strand, there is no need of a intermediate step of converting it into again a positive strand, because itself it is a positive strand. In case if it is a negative strand, it needs to be converted into a positive strand by reverse transcriptase, and then the central dogma will continue. Okay, moving on to the genera. As I said, there are 4 genera: alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. Now, alpha and beta genera are found in bats and rodents, whereas gamma and delta are found in avians or birds. Now, you all will question that a bat is also a bird. No, bat is a bird. Obviously, it is a bird, but it is a mammal. Okay, so the transmission of the virus through mammals or from mammal to mammal is found to be easier, or we can track its history to mammals. So bat being mammal, we have seen that this virus has a reservoir or is present in bats, and that is how it is being transmitted, or the transmission of the virus takes place. Whereas in case of birds, it is the gamma and delta. I gave you all an example. What do you mean by zoonotic origin? Obviously, it is first seen in animals. In this case, it's bats. From bat, the intermediate host in case of COVID-19 is pangolins or snakes, and through these animals, it has been moved on to humans. Next slide, please, DP. Talking about the structure, see, as you all can see, it is an envelope virus with those spike-like things on its surface, giving it a corona-like appearance, or a halo-like an appearance, or a crown-like an appearance, and that is how it's got its name. When you dissect it, or the cross-section when you move inside the virus, or when you break open the envelope, you get to see the RNA. Okay, next slide, please. And we'll talk about the structure in details as we are moving. Yeah, this gives you a clear indication of the structure of the virus. We will talk about the structure of the virus moving from outside to inside. Now, there are 4 types of structural proteins present on the virus. You have the envelope protein, you have the membrane protein, you have the spike protein, and you have the nucleoprotein. I repeat, you have the spike protein, you have the membrane protein, you have the envelope protein, and lastly, you have the nucleoprotein. All these form the 4 structural proteins of the virus. The genome is made up of single-stranded positive or a sense strand of, or a plus strand of RNA. Now, the spike protein, let us talk about the proteins and the basic function of these proteins. The spike protein is made up of glycoprotein. It has 2 subunits, the S1 and the S2 subunit. Functionally, okay, I have also made a model. If you can see the model, it will become far more clear. This is your virus. Okay, I have cut it. It was like this. I have cut it into 2 and will give you a cross section of the virus. These are your spike proteins. Okay, you can see dots, yellow dots and white dots. Let us call these yellow dots as envelope protein and the white dots as membrane protein. Okay, so on the envelope, you have the spike, the membrane, and the envelope. All these are anchored or held onto the envelope. Assembled, anchored, or held on to the envelope. So three structural proteins, that is the spike, envelope, and the membrane proteins are on the envelope, whereas the fourth protein, which is your nuclear protein, is present inside. These blue dots, these bead-like things are your nuclear protein. Correct? Okay. Now spike, as I said, are made up of two subunits. You have the subunit 1, that is S1, and the subunit 2, that is the S2. S1, which is here, the S2 is here near the envelope, the S1 is outside, outermost. So S1 is basically important for the attachment or adhering to the host. Okay, host cell. I repeat, the subunit, the S1, that is the subunit 1, is responsible for the attachment to the host cell. Okay. Now this contains a receptor binding domain. What does it contain? It contains a receptor binding domain which recognizes the specific receptor present on the host cell. So here there is a receptor binding domain which will recognize the specific receptor. Where will it be present? Obviously on the host cell. Clear? Now, on the host cell, wherever the receptors are present, what will happen? The spike domain will go and attach. Okay, now what are these receptors made up of on the host cells? They are called as ACE2. I repeat, they are called as ACE2. ACE. ACE stands for angiotensin converting enzyme 2. Where are they present? On the host cell. Say for example, this is your host cell, this is your virus. You have the spike. Okay, you have the, say, receptors present on the host cell. This spike, which are these receptors, will go and attach to the ACE2 receptor on the host cell. Are these receptors present on all cells of the body? No, they have specific regions where they will be present. For example, they'll be there on the naso region, that is your nasopharyngeal region, lungs, intestine, heart, and kidney. So you have your upper respiratory tract do show the presence of these receptors to which your virus goes and attaches. So say for example, this is the key, this is your lock. The key will get into the lock, open the lock and get into the cell. Followed? Now, as I said, obviously what will happen? You have the S1 receptor which will bind to the ACE2, okay? And that is how the attachment of the virus to the host cell takes place. We will talk about the function of the S2 when we are talking about the mode of entry. Okay, but just remember the S2, okay, that is the subunit 2 is very close to the envelope. I will discuss that as we go ahead with it. Then you have, sorry, then you have the M protein, which is the membrane protein, which are also anchored or assembled on the envelope. The membrane proteins are found to be or are the most abundant proteins which are found on the viral surface, and basically it defines the shape of the virus envelope. It can be thought as a central organizer for the assembly of the virus, as well as it interacts with the other structural proteins which are present on the virus. Moving on to the envelope protein. Envelope proteins are found out to be the smallest of the major structural proteins and has several roles to play. It is essential in the assembling and the release of the virus during the during the bursting of the virus from the host cell. Nuclear protein. Nuclear protein is nothing but your protein which is present inside, which are responsible for the replication and assembling of the proteins of your virus particles. To this nuclear protein, you have a thread-like structure, which gives you like a beaded appearance, wherein the thread appears to be the genome, which is your single-stranded RNA, and the beads are nothing but your nucleoprotein. So it forms the basic nucleocapsid, okay, which has the single-stranded RNA along with the nucleoprotein, which forms a or which are entangled into one another. Yeah, next slide, please. So coronavirus, as I explained, is an enveloped virus. Now, obviously we've spoken about all the structures, that is, we've spoken about the envelope protein, we've spoken about the membrane protein, we've talked about the spike protein, which are glycoproteins, nucleoproteins. But what is the envelope made up of? Envelope is nothing but it is made up of a lipid bilayer, and some part of the envelope are nothing but when the cell or when the virus is released out of the host cell, it picks up the cell membrane of the host cell. I repeat, the envelope basically forms a part of the host cell membrane. So the envelope is made up of lipid bilayer, and lipids basically dissolve or get destroyed in alcohol as well as by soap. That is the reason the precaution that has been constantly being bombarded on us, so as to wash our hands clean with soap or sanitize our hands with alcohol, is for this simple reason, because this will help the envelope, which is made up of lipid bilayer, to get completely destroyed. And if the envelope is destroyed, there won't be any spikes. Since there are no spikes, there won't be any attachment. As there are no attachment, the virus cannot get into the host cell. So the simple mechanism of using alcohol in the sanitizer or soap while washing your hands is to see to it that the envelope gets dissolved, which is nothing but the lipid bilayer it is made up of. Moving on to the genome, it is nothing but a unsegmented or monoparted positive strand of RNA. It is made up of about 27 to 32 kilo base pairs, which is the longest of the RNA virus so far known. Helical, it has a helical nucleocapsid, which we've just seen. It gives a bead and thread-like appearance, and that's arranged in a helical manner within the envelope. As I said, the corona appearance is because of the spike, which are made up of glycoprotein, which gives a long club or petal-shaped projection of fringes outside of the envelope. So through the envelope, these spikes are projected out, and when you do an electron microscope, it is this spikes or the glycoprotein which gives you a halo-like or a crown-like appearance to the virus. Next slide, please. So this is again to brush through. Structural proteins includes your phosphorylated nucleocapsid, which is made up of 50 to 60 kilodaltons of protein. Membrane glycoprotein, which is 20 to 35 kilodalton and serves as a matrix protein. Spike glycoprotein, which are your spike proteins, is about 180 to 220 kilodaltons, made up of petal-shaped peplomers, giving it a crown-like appearance. Thus the name given is coronavirus. And you have the envelope protein. These are the four main types of protein, of which the membrane glycoprotein is found in abundance. The smallest to be found is your envelope protein. Nucleocapsid protein are responsible for replication and assembling, and spike glycoprotein, as I said, is responsible for the attachment. Next slide, please. This gives you again the functions of the protein. M protein, most abundant, responsible for the shape of the envelope. S and the M, that is the membrane and the spike proteins, are also the transmembrane proteins and are involved in virus assembling during the replication. And N protein, largely involved in the processes related to the viral genome or replication. Next slide, please, DP. Genome, as I told, it's a positive sense or plus stranded, single stranded RNA. The size of the genome being 27 to 32 kbs, which is the longest of the RNA virus which is found. Sense strand RNA genome associate with the nucleoprotein to form a helical nucleocapsid. Helical nucleocapsid is about 9 to 11 nanometers in diameter. The 5' end, approximately about 20 to 22 kbs, carries the replicase gene, which encodes multiple enzymatic activities. Next slide, please. Yeah, now please understand this concept very clearly. This tells you how the virus gets into the cell or into the host cell. I told you that you have the spikes, or the virus basically has the spikes, okay, which is the spike protein, and the spike is has two subunits, that is the S1, subunit 1, and the S2. You have receptors which are present in the host cells, which forms the ACE2 receptors. To this ACE2 receptor, your spike or the S1 subunit goes and attaches. Okay. Now the S2 subunit, which is here, gets cleaved, okay, or it gets broken by enzymes which are present, such as you have serine proteases, which are abbreviated as TMPRSS2. Now, as I said, I gave you all an example, or I explained it to you, that the envelope, which is next to the S2 S2 subunit is made up of lipid bilayer. Your lipid bilayer, okay, now as we are discussing how the virus enters into the host cell, let us also understand the anatomy of your animal cell. In case of animal cells, obviously there are no cell walls. So you start off, the outermost layer which is there is your cell membrane or the plasma membrane. I told you that the envelope is made up of lipid bilayer, which is very similar to the lipid bilayer of the plasma membrane. So you have your S1 being attached to the ACE, correct? Now this, when it cleaves, okay, what happens? Your envelope comes close to your plasma membrane of the host cell, and it fuses. The envelope fuses with the plasma membrane of the host cell. And in this fashion, the RNA gets entered or is injected into the host cell. That is one way by which it can get its entry into the host cell. Or secondly, what can happen is there can be a formation of an endosome. Okay, there can be a formation of an endosome, and by the formation of an endosome is directly taken in. The walls of the viruses can then be dissolved by acidification or by the action of other proteases which are present in the host cell, and that is how the walls of the endosome will, or endocytosis, can take place, releasing the RNA of the virus into the host cell. So please follow the figure. Entry of the virus. The coronavirus approaches the cell membrane in the diagram 1. In diagram 2, as you can see, the S1 subunit, which is shown with the red dot at the distal end of the glycoprotein, that is the spike of the virus, binds to the membrane bound molecule of the ACE2 blue color, which is shown on the host cell. As more and more S1 subunits of the glycoprotein spike bind to the membrane bound molecules of the ACE2, the membrane starts to form an envelope around the virus, which is shown in the figure 3 and 4 and 5. Okay, in the figure 5, it shows a complete endosome which is formed. So the process keeps on continuing till there is a formation of an endosome. So that process continues. The process continues until the endosome completes, and the virus can then enter into the cell by two ways. I told you, first is a cell-bound membrane serine protease, which is shown in the diagram 6. Okay, cleaves the viruses S1 subunit, which is shown in the second diagram as red, from its S2 subunit, which is shown by black, and also cleaves the ACE2 enzyme, which is present on the host cell. The endosome enters the cell's endocytosis, which is called as endocytosis, where the virus is then released by acidification or by action of various other protease enzymes, such as capepsin. Yeah. Next, the same serine protease, which is TMPRSS2, causes irreversible conformational changes in the virus's S2 subunit, activating them, after which the virus fuses to the cell membrane and can be internalized by the cell itself. So as I gave you all an example, the envelope, which is made up of the plasma membrane, will then fuse up with the cell membrane of the host cell, and there will be a direct injection of the viral RNA into the host cell. Next slide, please. Okay, what is pathogenesis? Pathogenesis is nothing but mode of infection. How can any healthy individual get infected? Okay, now what is the mode of infection, or how can the infection spread to different people? Now moving on to the next slide. This picture or this slide basically gives you a clear-cut idea about how a healthy individual will contract the disease from a person who is infected. When a person who is infected with COVID-19, the virus is bound to be present in the respiratory tract. Okay, it starts off from the nasal or the oral region, moving on to the lower respiratory tract, right up till your lungs, and right up till the alveolar region. Now, in this case, as we have already, since we are aware what are the symptoms, when a person who is infected with this disease, he is bound to have cold, cough, and so forth. So when a person who is infected sneezes or coughs, is bound to release a large number of viruses into the atmosphere or into the air. There are going to be two types of particles. Okay, one which is called as droplet nuclei, which has a size which is less than 1 nanometer. So they are very, very minute, and being small in size, they can travel a larger distance, a distance up to 1 meter. Okay, I repeat, droplet nuclei are extremely small size particles, smaller in size, as small as 5 micron-meter, and they can travel, being smaller in size, they can travel as large as 1 meter of distance. So that is the reason they have we have to take precautions, or we are maintaining social distancing. So as if any person is infected, the nuclei, droplet nuclei being the smallest size, do not get in or come near a person who is uninfected or healthy. The second are called as droplets. Droplet nuclei are less than 5 micron-meter. Droplets are more than 5 micron-meter. And therefore, being larger in size, they cannot move to a larger area. They will have a restriction with respect to the travel. They'll travel less than 1 meter. Okay. So therefore, it is very important that we maintain social distancing. These droplets, or if a person coughs and those kerchiefs, or the person who is infected touches different objects or different areas, okay, those viruses are bound to spread to those regions or to those areas where the person has touched. Therefore, it is very important that you maintain hygienic conditions, sanitary conditions, so that you do not, or the person who is infected does not transmit the disease, and therefore there is a reason for quarantining yourself or keeping yourself in isolation. Now, these are also called as fomites because they are non-living. They can move about to larger distances and move on to people who are healthy. They have also shown diagrams with respect to touch, that is direct contact. So if you sneeze and if you are infected and if you go and touch somebody, it's going to get transmitted to that person who is healthy. You have to keep a proper distance. So they have shown you figures of beds so that you isolate yourself and keep yourself in quarantine so that you do not transmit the disease to an healthy individual. Next slide, please, Deepti. Yeah, so mode of infection, the primary route of infection or transmission is the respiratory tract. So by sneezing, talking, that is the reason you are expected to wear your mask, so that even if you are infected, if you are suffering from the disease, you do not spread the infection or the virus in the air, where there won't be any control of, because people tend to breathe in this air and there is a transmission of this disease. So it is very essential that proper sanitation, and hygienic conditions are maintained. People who are suffering, who show symptoms, need to take proper precautions. So the primary mode or route of transmission is the respiratory tract. Most likely it spread through aerosols and in large droplets while sneezing, coughing, talking, and so forth. Infection leads to the loss of ciliary action and degenerative changes affecting the cilia of the epithelial cells of the respiratory tract. The best area or the location where the viruses has been found to remain for a longer period of time is the upper respiratory tract, because it's the optimum. It has the optimum temperature of 33 to 35 degrees Celsius, where it survives and multiplies very rapidly, and through that region, it then moves on to the lower respiratory. Infection remains localized to the upper respiratory tract, and then eventually it moves on to the lower respiratory tract, right up to the alveolar region, where there is accumulation of fluid, and then there is a need for ventilator because the person who is infected experiences breathlessness. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this was all about how we should take proper care, why we are using disinfectants or soap to sanitize ourselves or to prevent infection to be causing. So it is very important at this juncture to remain at home, to be safe, think positive, and keep yourself healthy. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this session. Thank you, Deepti.